Hello, and welcome to the Empowerography podcast. This is a platform created for women's voices to be heard and a place to share their stories, journeys, and successes with the world for the purpose of helping other women who might be on similar journeys. We are empowering women one episode at a time. I'm your host, Brad Walsh, so kick back, grab one of your favorite beverages, and enjoy the stories. Hello, everyone. Good afternoon, good day. Welcome to the Empowerography podcast. My name is Brad Walsh, your host, and today's guest is Anna Johnson. She is the owner of a branding and marketing company called Branding by A&J and a boudoir photographer. Her company is called Boudoir Ego. She is based out of California. And I'd just like to say welcome to the podcast, Anna. How are you today?
I am great. Thank you for having me today. I appreciate it.
How's your day going so far? How's the weather in California today?
Oh, honestly, it's been hot and I'm not a fan of hot weather. So I know everybody's like, cry me a river, hot weather, boo-hoo. I hate it. And I love snow and I love the rain and I'm in the wrong city, but I'm stuck here. So it's hot and sunny.
Well, I'll trade you our weather for yours. Gladly.
I would love it.
You can have it. You can have the winter weather. I mean, it's not really winter today, but winter weather today, but it's cold, so you can have it. I'll trade you. Anyway, let's jump right in. So I'm just curious, Anna, what got you excited about being an entrepreneur and starting your own business?
Well, honestly, I've been doing photography since I was 16. And it was always just a side hobby. And, I got married, had kids, went to school, went to college, became a licensed pediatric nurse, and worked for a very prestigious hospital here in San Diego. And honestly, like just working and stuff was something I just kind of thought I had to do because I was told my whole life that photography is not going to make you any money and you're not going to go anywhere with that. And it's fun, but it's just a hobby. And then I had an injury. And with that injury, it kind of allowed me more time while I was healing to focus on photography since I wasn't able to go back to work. And during that time, I built basically a really good clientele. And I had the option to either go back to work or continue to pursue photography because it was at a point where I either had to back off of what I was doing and basically turn people away or go back to work. And I was like, you know what, I don't want to turn these people away. And I've always loved doing this. So I'm going to leave the nursing field and I'm going to open up a studio. And so I did. And I started from my garage, as most people do, or from my home. And then from there, I moved to a small office, and then I moved to a small studio. Then I moved to a bigger studio, and now I'm in an even bigger studio. And with all of that, the branding and marketing kind of came about in a different aspect. I have always taught, so I was actually a lead in pediatrics, and I taught new nursing students coming in, which is actually really encouraged for nursing as far as in any medical field. Teaching and education is they put a high focus on that, and so I taught new grad students coming into the nursing field, pediatrics, and so teaching was always something that I did. And through owning a business and then being successful in my business, I started seeing people who just really sucked at owning a business.
To put it politely.
Yeah, well, I'm very honest.
Yes, I can tell. That's a good thing, though. It lets people know where they stand, right?
Right. Well, and like the thing is a lot of photographers have a lot of skill, but they do not have business skill. And where I really found that they lacked was branding, because so many people were like, especially with boudoir, but the same happens in any genre of photography, is people would be like, oh, I do this because I want to empower women. And I'm like, you and every other photographer want to empower women in boudoir photography, but what makes you different? What is the reason why you want to empower women? And how can you get that message across And then how can you relate that to people? Because that's what's going to make you stand out, but that's also what's going to draw in your potential client to you.
Right.
And I started seeing that as kind of a trend that people were, and I still see that as a trend. People just have a tendency to see someone's work or see their site and be like, I want to be them.
Mm-hmm.
It's amazing, but they need to become their own individual self, because unless their company's built, which most photographers is not, in a way where there's like 8 billion photographers. There are some companies that are like that, but most of them, it's the person who owns the company is the person who's shooting, or maybe they have a small team. And with that type of business and that type of building, you really, really need to represent your brand, and people are hiring you because they want you. And so with that said, you really have to get your branding right. So yeah, that's kind of where I got into branding, and social media marketing just kind of came along with that as my business was building. And I'm a strong believer that the proof is in the pudding.
Mm-hmm.
Really, I just kind of am one of those people who feel like you should not be teaching or educating unless you can prove that you're doing the same thing.
Right. That makes sense.
You know, and there are educators out there who are like, hey, I'm amazing at this, or I'm great at sales, or I'm great at this, and they will throw out fake numbers. But then when you actually look into it and you look them up, you realize that that's not true. And it kind of breaks my heart, because they get a lot of people paying them for actual education, and they're hoping to get education. I'm not saying people won't get anything out of it, but it's kind of just the blind leading the blind.
Yeah,
And
people paying their hard-earned money, right, to
right.
go and learn from someone who claims to be an expert. I remember there was quite a bit of scandal going on, probably about a year to 2 years ago, about this exact topic of photographers posing as teachers or acting as teachers and offering courses when they really weren't qualified to do so.
Right. And it still happens,
Mm-hmm.
unfortunately. And sometimes, you know, you really just have to do your research yourself. A lot of times it's because, you know, if you've never been to that city that the specific educator is teaching in, and you don't even know any of the demographics of that city, that person can make themselves sound like they are a god in their own city, when really their city could be a population of 20 people.
Right.
So it's like, of course you're a god in that city, because there's only 20 people. And so you're the only photographer around. But, you know, you just have to do your research and your education. But with that said, yeah, I've just always said, you know what, the proof's in the pudding, and I'm going to excel on what I know I'm good at, which is business, branding, and marketing. I mean, I think I'm a decent photographer too, but
I would say so. I've seen your stuff. I would have to tend to agree with you. I think you're more than a decent photographer.
but that's not, and it's not that I don't like teaching people how to take photos. I actually don't mind, but my passion in my heart is really just seeing people succeed. And I get excited when I see someone who comes to me who says, hey, you know what, I was able to double my profit last year. Oh, I booked these people. I get excited with them, because I know that they're taking what I said to them and they're implementing it, and they're becoming successful. And so although it's not my success, in a sense, it feels like my success. That might be like kind of a narcissistic way of looking at it.
Well, no, I think that it is partly your success, because you helped give them the guidance to get to that point. So I think you can take some credit there and say that, yeah, you share in the success. I mean, I think those are great attributes to have, that you get that excited and you're that happy when your clients succeed to that degree as well. I think that's awesome.
Yeah, and it really does. It really just genuinely makes me happy to help them out and to see them go places. I'm like, hey, you know what, you're doing it, and that's good.
See, that's nice. That's genuine. Whereas I think some people are just in it to make money, and they teach the person, or they help the person along with what they need to help them with, and then they just don't bother. It's like ties are cut and move on to the next one, like an assembly line, right?
Yeah, and well, you know what, and let's be real. The people who are, if you're constantly on Facebook, constantly on social media, then that means you're probably not constantly working and doing your job. If you have that kind of time. And there are people who are amazing educators who they did the work and they were super successful in their studio, and then now they become platform speakers, and I admire them. And honestly, like, that's their job now, but they did do the work prior, that now their jobs just kind of switched to educating. I personally never want to give up being a photographer and just being a platform speaker. So I do run a full-time studio. And with that said, we do take limited amount of clients because honestly, I shoot still about 120 boudoir sessions a year.
Wow.
We have weddings and we have our marketing company. And so it just doesn't leave that much room for me to do tons of extra stuff, but helping people and educating people is still a passion of mine. And so I do try to leave room for that. But I do run a full-time studio and I am busy. And so I'm not on social media a lot. And I always tell people, you know what, in order for you to reach or figure out about me, you're not going to see me as the face that's constantly online and constantly doing stuff unless you're following my Instagram, because that's kind of the only way. And that's more so for my boudoir clients, but that's the only way you're probably ever going to see my face is I'm just not online that often. And kind of the only time I really am on Facebook is after business is closed and when I'm sitting in front of the TV at home and I've already left work. And that's when I'm like, oh, hey, now I'll kind of doodle around on Facebook.
Right.
Or first thing in the morning, honestly, when I'm going potty in the morning, that's like the first time I'm like, oh, hey, I have to sit here on the toilet already. I might as well.
Might as well make use of the time, right?
Might as well make use of the time and get off Facebook.
Got nothing else to do. Well, you're a woman who's wearing many hats. I think that's very admirable. Leaving a nursing career to go in a completely different direction and into the arts and photography and branding and marketing, that's incredible. Good for you. How long? So obviously you started with the photography first. How long has the branding and marketing business been up and running?
So I actually opened up my company and it was under the name as Apogee Branding, which is still a functioning branding company. But I handed that over and sold that business to someone else. So with Apogee, the goal with that was to reach out to large companies. And my passion is just smaller businesses and helping the underdogs achieve. And so within that company, that was in 2016. So it's been 3 years, but that company started, and on the side, I was helping small businesses and photographers through that company. And then I just said, you know what, I think I need to branch out. And so last year I merged my photography company with my business partner, Johanna Kitson. And she handles our wedding side, and she also does family and newborn, and then she helps with the branding and marketing as well. And she does a lot of like influencers, so like bloggers and social media influencers. She does a lot of their branding photos, and that's kind of like her passion and where her heart's at. And so when we merged, our goal was just to help, like I said, help the underdogs and the small businesses and really just help them succeed in what they're doing. And my primary focus has really been photographers, although we do have some small boutiques that have hired us, as well as small salons. And so it's not that we're just focused on photographers. We actually help other people. And with our branding and marketing, I teach it, but I don't teach it in a way where it's just for photography. I teach it in a way that it could be for any business.
Right.
And the education that I take for branding, like the classes that I take and the stuff that I learn they're not even photographers at all. I strongly believe that when it comes down to marketing, it's important to learn all aspects and not just one niche, and then apply it to your specific field instead of just learning from your specific field. Because the reality is most people who are teaching branding and marketing for photographers really don't know what they're talking about.
Right. So you just tweak it and tailor it for your particular line of business.
Yeah. And some things honestly do go back and forth. Most things do. Some things you kind of have to say, okay, well, let's take this from it, but not take this information, because it's not going to really work with photography and how people do businesses as a photographer. But for the most part, most things, when you understand especially with marketing does translate one-on-one across every platform.
Right.
Branding specifically is a little different for each business,
Mm-hmm.
but you can take the information and apply it to your own and be just as successful. So yeah, so I focus on photographers and small businesses, and the small business aspect of where people are starting their company. And boudoir photography obviously is a passion of mine because I'm a boudoir photographer. So I do love helping boudoir photographers with this. And that's kind of, it's helping boudoir photographers is always easier for me because I'm like, oh, hey, I got you.
Right up your alley. Yeah, exactly. So keeping with the many hats that you're wearing and keeping with that line of questioning and so forth, what have you found since you're running a few businesses all at once, and you've had the teaching thing, so it's somewhere falls in along the same line. What's one of the most frustrating things you've found about being an entrepreneur?
Honestly, I think it's the lack of honesty and communication. So I find that, and honestly, being a female kind of sucks too.
Okay.
I mean, so once I reached a point of owning a studio and moving into a bigger studio, I really did find that women are very discriminated and not taken serious in their job position from landlords. Not so much in the industry itself. I get a lot of respect from photographers that admire me or that work with me, or ones that I work with, or even people who I admire. We have mutual respect for each other.
Right.
But in the real world, outside of photography, being a business owner as a female, I think has been a challenge, just because a lot of the stuff that you have to do as a business in general, having a studio, having insurance, having a building, a lot of times we are taken as girls with a hobby. And unfortunately, there are a lot of those. There's a lot of females who have hobbies that this is what they do. And I think that that when you're pricing yourself at a price that is very low, it's very easy for someone to take you not so serious. They're kind of like, hey, well, you know what? They're cheap, so it must be their hobby.
Right.
But going business to business and doing business to business marketing, when working with businesses that are not just female businesses, I have found that sometimes, and it really depends on the generation, but a lot of the older generation males have a tendency to, without like saying all of them, not all of them, but a lot of them have a tendency to think, oh, hey, these girls are just so cute, starting their little business. And they treat us like
horrible. That's horrible. But you know what? I think that also translates into the corporate world, because I come from corporate background. I was working in a corporation for 12 and a half years, and I saw that as well, where women don't succeed, or not as many women are successful in the corporate or business world in that regard either. It's still seen, I think, as an old boys club.
Yeah.
Which is sad.
I think it's just because it's not that women can't.
No, of course.
Because it's just a lack of them being able to, and kind of being discriminated against. And like I said, when looking for studios, like we found that as an issue, is a lot of people would be like, oh, well, do you think you could really afford something like this? And I'm like, honey, we wouldn't be coming to you if we couldn't.
Or I could probably afford more than you can.
Yeah, or even just like riding on the plane. Actually, when I was speaking this last WPPI in Vegas, and I was speaking outside of WPPI for branding marketing, on the plane ride to Vegas, my business partner and I had gotten a conversation with this older guy and his son behind us, and he really kind of just was like, oh, you guys are just this, like, oh, how cute. You girls are cute starting your business, and good luck to you. And the guy was a business owner himself. And so it was, us talking business. And it wasn't really until we got deep into the conversation that he looks over and he's like, oh, hey, you actually really know what you're talking about. And I was kind of like, no shit, Sherlock.
I'd be pissed. That's like a horrible assumption to make. They don't know you from Adam. And again, it goes back to, like you said, because you're a woman, oh, they can't be serious, or they don't know as much as men, or which is an absolutely ridiculous train of thought. It's horrible.
It is. And, unfortunately, it's not, I don't really fault it on them because, a lot of people have just been raised to think that way. So they really don't know any different. That's kind of like how they've been taught. And I kind of feel like it's my job just to educate them and show them like, hey, you know what? You might have been taught a certain way, but you need to understand there's a lot of powerful women out there.
Exactly.
And I would say that's something that I get a lot when people talk to me is, wow, you really, really know your stuff. And I know, I mean, I've even gotten it from females where they're just like older females that are like, wow, I'm shocked. Like, you really know your stuff. And they're, and then a lot of them, we've had a few that have hired us after talking to us. And I think that that's kind of proof that like you do know your stuff.
Mm-hmm.
But sometimes it's like, wow, I guess I didn't realize that like someone younger than me or a female or someone who's a photographer would actually know about branding or would actually know about marketing. And so I feel like a lot of being a business owner is really just proving yourself and having to prove yourself to people, because there's a lot of people who just don't take you as serious.
Okay, so keeping with this train of thought, then what piece of advice, if you could give one piece of advice to younger women and women in general that want to become entrepreneurs but are scared because of that stereotype that's put upon women, or they don't want to deal with the bullshit that comes along like you had just described, what piece of advice would you give these women to help combat that attitude and that narrow-minded thought process?
So, the biggest advice that I can give is wear your confidence like a sleeve and put that confidence on every day. And that stems from, again, like for me, I truly believe that stems from the way you look, which then allows you to have that confidence, but also like the only thing that's going to stop someone is their own fear.
Mm-hmm.
And honestly, you're going to get several no's, and that's fine. I've had billions of no's, but taking that and saying, you know what, I'm going to keep trying, and you can say no to me, but I'm going to go to someone else, and then I'm going to go to someone else, and I'm going to keep going until I get a yes. And once I get that yes, I can look back and smile at all those no's and say, haha, this person took a chance, and now I'm going to make this person successful because they took a chance on me. And that's kind of the way that I have walked with it, is more of like a confident attitude in just saying, hey, you know what, you can tell me no, but I'm just going to keep going. And so for those people who are afraid, swallow that fear and just go for it. And for those people who have had those millions of no's that are being like beat down by them, basically, just know that someone's going to say yes. And all you have to do is keep trying and keep pushing, because that's the difference, really. What makes someone successful and someone who's not is a lot of people hear those no's and then they give up. And the ones that become successful hear them and take it as a challenge to continue to fight for it. And eventually someone says yes, and then the next person says yes, and then the next person says yes, and it becomes a ripple. And it might be several no's before the next one again, but eventually you do get a yes. You just have to keep working at it, and looking at, listening and taking the advice of why someone says no. So being bold enough to say, well, what is your reason for not doing this?
Right.
And then taking their advice and saying, okay, you know what, I'm going to change this or tweak this. If you can, sometimes there is nothing you can tweak, and you're like, you know what, they should have said yes, but I can't do anything different, and I'm just going to keep going. But sometimes their advice is honestly like golden. And it's one of those, that one little thing you needed to hear to say, hey, you know what, I need to switch this up. And you switch up one little thing, and then the next person's going to take a chance and say yes.
Well, I also find that no doesn't necessarily mean flat out no. It could just mean no, not right now. It's not the right time right now to work together, to help, to do whatever it is you're looking for. No doesn't necessarily mean a flat out no, never it's going to happen. So persistence, I think, plays into that huge, right?
Yeah, and again, asking them what their reason for
Mm-hmm.
not wanting to is. I know I've reached out to businesses and done some B2B marketing, and have found businesses saying no to me. And sometimes it's season, and it has nothing to do with what I'm offering or what I want to do. It's just not the right season for them.
Right.
So you just have to wait and say, okay, you know what? Maybe I jumped the gun, because right now they're doing their winter special, whatever. They're doing this thing going on, and I need to fit within their schedule. So let's see when we can do this, and let them know that I'm willing to change the season around, or let them
Mm-hmm.
know that I'm willing to wait for them.
Mm-hmm.
And really just choosing who you want to work with wisely is
Right.
also important. Everything that you do as a business affects what's going to happen in the future. And
Mm-hmm.
so, making sure that you don't go to someone prematurely, making sure that you don't decide that you're going to run specials, or that you're going to announce something and then not have any of the ducks lined in a row or pieces lined up,
Mm-hmm.
and making sure that you have everything together prior to offering it. So if you're going to work with businesses, making sure you already have those contracts, that you already have the business plan right now, and that you already have everything ready to go. So when they say yes, you can jump on it and you got it going.
Yeah.
Um, but if you don't have that, then it just kind of makes you look sloppy. And honestly, as a business, and especially if they're more successful than you, that makes them kind of fear working with you, because they're like, wait a second, they don't have their stuff together. And, I need someone who is a little more organized.
Mm-hmm.
And that's something I see. I know I have people who reach out to me sometimes, and they'll come up with these amazing ideas, and I'm like, all right, let's go for it. And then they have nothing together, and I'm like, well, I wasn't going to put it together for you. My plate is already full. So
Be prepared,
you
right?
can't do that on your own.
Yeah, exactly. Do you have any entrepreneurs or photographers in particular that you admire?
Oh, I do. So Jen Rosenbaum,
Uh-huh.
she's one of my good friends, and I really, really admire who she is as a person, who she is as a photographer, who she is as an educator. I stand behind her as far as what she's teaching, and I've seen her. I've seen the proof in her pudding, and I've
Uh-huh.
been following her. And I mean, I've known her now for years, but she's been around for years, and so I really, really highly respect her.
Okay.
Another person is Cara Marie.
Okay.
These are all boudoir photographers,
Mm-hmm.
so I'm going to start with them.
Yeah.
But I really respect Cara. One of the things I really like is she too is someone who's going to focus on her studio and what she's doing, prior to just making it be like, hey, I'm an educator and I'm a speaker. And I respect that, because she's able to do her work and able to have the education and the teaching. And that's also why, you might see her if you're following her on social media, but she's not in tons of group offering her classes, offering her workshops and stuff. And it's mainly
Uh-huh.
because she's actually working.
Okay.
And so I really respect that out of her. And as far as, gosh, there's so many people who do marketing that I really, really admire. Gary Vee's a really popular one.
Yes.
And I love his podcast. I love what he has to say. He's really smart and brilliant in his execution of things sometimes. Uh,
Mm-hmm.
there's been times he'll admit that he's kind of missed the mark. And that is just honestly how life works. There are opportunities, and sometimes you don't take them. And it's a kick in the ass when you realize you should have taken that opportunity, because now you would be so much more successful if you only did it back then.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, but yeah, I mean, he's definitely one who I admire in the marketing world. And then honestly, that's kind of it, because
Mm-hmm.
there are many more marketing people who I follow that, again, have nothing to do with photography. But that's pretty much it as far as the people who those would probably be my top three.
Okay.
And yeah, I mean, I really just,
I admire all three of those people as well. Actually, they're they're big names in the industries they're in. So, yeah, you can't help but admire them. Um,
yeah,
what?
there's local too. So I mean, in San Diego, sorry, just going off
That's okay.
topic.
That's okay.
Um, Marissa with the Boudoir Divas.
Mm-hmm.
She's kind of gone on a different career path, but I really do admire her, mainly because her and I went to high school. So I've actually seen her grow her business literally from her garage.
Oh, okay.
Like, and it's in my own city. So as far as someone local, that's someone who I admire now. She's in Nashville and she kind of travels back and forth.
Right.
That's someone too that I've always admired. And for me, it's always been nice because I know her on a personal level. And so it's admiring someone who I actually know too, even in my own city, and so yeah, definitely she's someone who deserves to be mentioned, because she's really worked hard at where she's gone and what she's done, and she built her company back when it wasn't as easy to build a company.
Mm-hmm. So going back in time, what do you wish you had known when you first started out that you now know, having the experience in business, in photography, in branding and marketing? Is there one thing that you wish you had known when you started out?
Yeah.
Yeah.
One main thing, honestly, would be branding. I really,
Okay.
really wish that I knew branding like I know it now when I first started my business, because I was like many other photographers and I said, hey, you know what? I'm going to go grab this template, create my website, or use a website template. And my website at the time looked like every other photographer's. And my message said the same thing as everyone else. And I started with fashion and boudoir. So my message went something like, hi, my name's Anna, and I want to empower women. And, I would go on to women feeling comfortable in their skin and yada, yada, yada. And at the time, I thought that was it was my own words, but it was very similar to the many of words that other people are using.
Right.
And so really it was branding. Once I got my branding together and for my boudoir, for my wedding company, once I really made that unique as to why I specifically do that, that really made my career, my overall business, everything changed. The clients that come to me are literally clients that want me.
Mm-hmm.
And the clients, every once in a while, I get someone who sees my website. They say, oh, this is amazing. Or they see my Instagram and they say, this is amazing. And they reach out to me, and honestly, they're not my client. And that's why I do believe it's important to know others in your community, because there's been people who I've referred out because I'm like, hey, what you're looking for, I either don't offer or I will never offer. So find this person.
Right.
Like couples photography is one. I will offer that to my clients, but I don't offer couples photography, or even just the style that they're looking for. Sometimes people will send me their Pinterest board and it's filled with chandeliers or just a lot of stuff in the background. And I mean, photos itself looks gorgeous. And I'm like, that's amazing. But if you're looking for a studio like this, or if you're looking for something like this, you're not going to get it here.
Right.
My approach to photography and to boudoir is very simplistic. My studio is very simplistic. And so I think it's important to really get that down. And I'm a super simple person too. So, I mean, it works. That is why the branding is like that, is because that's who I am. Although I'm crazy, if you ask me.
Well, your branding is a reflection of who you are, right?
Well, hopefully it's not crazy, because I'm crazy, but
you're not crazy. Come on now.
On Mondays.
We'll have to ask your husband how crazy you are.
Oh, that's probably not a good idea. You know what? Everybody has their own crazy. It's just how much someone's willing to deal with.
Right. True enough.
But yeah, so with that said, I really just think that branding is like the key point to getting business. And it's even the key point to like your pricing. Like everything goes straight back to branding. And again, like I admit it, like I was one of those photographers who would be like, hey, let me go and check out every photographer in my city and see what they're charging and see if that's what I should be charging. And to some extent, that kind of research is important, because you want to make sure that like you're being reasonable with your pricing. But I was making sure that it was like, hey, I'm going to try to do this package that's similar to theirs because that's what they're offering.
Right.
And honestly, that's not the way to do it. Like, I realized after branding and after figuring out my stuff that your pricing should really be a reflection of your brand. For instance, I'm not a luxury boudoir photographer.
Mm-hmm.
I do have pricing that's expensive, but I'm definitely not luxury. But someone who's looking for luxury, if they came to my site, saw my pricing, I'm not luxury pricing either. And if you are offering the luxury photography, you should be luxury pricing, because let's face it, there are some people who are willing to pay that, and they will literally only go to the sites that are charging luxury pricing because that's what they know and that's what they're willing to pay. And so they look at it as like, hey, if I'm paying more, I'm getting more. And
Right.
sometimes that's true.
Mm-hmm.
But that's just a slight example. There's more that goes into it. But I mean, reality is even pricing. Like, if your branding is spot on, your pricing, what products you're going to offer, how you're going to decorate your studio, how you're going to look, everything flows in it. And then that needs to represent you. And when I started off, a lot of what I was doing wasn't representing me as a person.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's just really confusing for those people who did come in. I really honestly feel bad for the first several clients that I had, because I mean, I had no idea what I was freaking doing. So
We all fumble our way through things in the beginning, right? And
oh, heck yeah. And you know what? I think their photos turn out good. I still look back at photos and I'm like, whoa, what was I thinking? But they're not horrible. So I'm
mm-hmm.
like, well, at least I had somewhat knew what I was doing. They just weren't amazing. But the reality is the experiences that I was getting, the conversations that I was having, was
Well,
not me.
yeah.
And your business needs to be about you if you're the photographer of your business, because that's what people expect. And so they need, they need to be able to go online, be able to read your website, and be able to feel like they know you already.
Mm-hmm.
And then from that first email, feel like they know you already. And so when they come in, they're like, dude, I know you because I've
Yeah,
been talking to you.
exactly. Exactly. What do you think your unique skill set or superpower is that has helped you become successful in your businesses?
Oh, probably communication. Uh,
Okay.
I know I've talked to you several times, and I am a talker. And so, I mean, can you guys tell? So, I am a talker. And so I really think that that's been something that's helped me. Is I am so excited about life, and I am excited and passionate about everything I talk about. Otherwise, I just don't talk about it. And so I will only talk about the things I'm passionate about. And therefore, when I'm passionate and I'm talking, I feel like people just feel that, and they can tell, and they get excited with me. But yeah, communication, talking to my clients, talking to businesses, all of that, I think, is, yeah, that's it.
Yeah, your passion definitely comes across. I mean, I've known you for a while now, and even just conversations, not even necessarily about business, but you can just tell your passion for life. And yes, definitely your passion for your businesses, but it's just there. It's evident. You can just hear it in your voice and the happiness and the excitement. And it's an incredible trait that you have. That's for sure. More people need that in their lives, I think.
Well,
It
and
is infectious when I'm talking to you, I get excited about things and whatever we're talking about, and it gives you a zest, a new zest or a new outlook when talking to you. So keep that up for sure. Hopefully, you never lose that.
yeah, well, um, man, I don't think I'll ever be able to lose not talking. I really love talking. So I'm sure it drives my business partner nuts because she's not a talker.
Uh-oh.
But honestly, I feel that part of what makes me success, that's what makes me stand out, but that's also what makes me successful, is just the ability to be able to talk to anyone and everyone. Like, I am the kind of person who goes into Starbucks and leaves, and I end up with 3 clients. And my business partner is always like, how in the world did you do that? You walked into the beauty store and you left, and now she's booking us for branding and for boudoir and for everything that you offer. And really, it's because I'm excited and passionate about what I'm doing. But honestly, like, I am a total empath. And so when someone tells me like that they're struggling, or that they, I listen to them. And when they tell me that they need help, I'm like, ooh, what can I do to help them? that's honestly how I feel. Like I get
Yeah,
excited and I'm like, oh my gosh, you need this? Let me help you. I can do this. And it's an amazing trait to have. But
it
on the
is.
downfall, it also sucks because I'm constantly helping other people.
Yeah, yeah.
And I love helping people. Like honestly, it is my passion. But I get super busy, and I have a tendency to not slow down. So one of the things that I've really strived hard to do this 2019 was just really set my schedule to give myself breaks and time off and allow myself to disconnect from my phone and really just try to not focus on work when I am off. Uh,
Hmm.
just because I do have a full schedule, and it's because I literally will walk into a Starbucks and walk out with a client who's booked. And that happens like anywhere I walk in, anywhere. My husband even laughs. He's like, dude, I don't know how you do this. I don't
It's
really
the
even know
gift,
how I do
gift
it
of the
because I'm not
gab, right?
trying to.
But communication's important in our business.
It
You
is.
have to be able to relate to clients. You have to be able to talk to clients in photography, in branding and marketing. I think especially in photography,
Oh, yeah.
because boudoir photography too, because you got to make your clients feel comfortable in front of the camera, comfortable enough that I mean, they're at their most vulnerable state or one of their most vulnerable states, wearing next to nothing in front of the camera. It's you have to be able to relate and talk.
Right. Well, and I mean, let's be real. Like, how many times, especially in front of a camera, have you seen photographers who will pose or will go from one shoot to the next shoot and never say anything to their client? And one thing I really, really pride myself on is I have relationships, not intimate at all. That would be,
Hmm.
but relationships with each of my clients. And I mean, I know by the time they leave, I know their whole life story, and they probably know my whole life story
Hmm.
because the entire time while we're shooting, we are talking nonstop. And it is just about getting to know them. And that goes from my business with branding and marketing. I do the same with small businesses, and it even is the same with each and every photography client who comes in. I talk to them constantly. When I do book a wedding and I get to know my bride gets to know me on a personal level, and I know her on a personal level.
Hmm.
And then I remember important things. So like if it's, and I mean, I do write things down too, so I don't forget, but
Yeah.
like I remember things that they tell me. So that way, when I go back to sitting down with them, I can say, oh yeah, you know what? How was that trip that you went on last week? Because I know you mentioned you were going to Hawaii, or I know you mentioned you were taking a cruise. How was that cruise? Did your daughter like it?
And
You know,
clients appreciate that.
and those, yeah, because they're like, wow, you remembered that. And honestly, people say that, and a lot of times I remember it because I was like, heck yeah, I actually want to know, how was it, like,
You're
I'm
being
being
genuine.
real.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. And I think the whole conversation you were talking about, speaking with the clients and relating your life story while you're shooting and them relating theirs, it also helps them get out of their own heads and take them out of that space where they're not so nervous and worried about being in front of this camera
Right.
next to nothing on it. Helps them be comfortable, helps them relax in front of the camera, which as well translates into much better images. Because let's be honest, you can tell when someone's uncomfortable
Oh yeah.
in front of the camera in the images after the shoot. You can tell that whether they're comfortable or not.
Yep. And it sure does. And especially with boudoir and being in your
Hmm.
lingerie and already being vulnerable,
Hmm.
uh, being able to have that communication is super important to having them feel comfortable. And, I always tell people not everyone is made to be a photographer. Not
Hmm.
everyone is made to be a business owner. And some people do not have that skill of being able to talk, and some
Right.
people do. And some people do great without it. The ones that usually really, really succeed are the ones that have no problem chatting with people and just being real and honest, because you can really see through someone being fake.
Hmm.
And when you're chatting around with someone and they're just kind of like, oh yeah, so how about those Padres, or how is that weather? And you're like, oh come on, like,
Yeah.
be something that you really, really want to know.
Stop
Uh,
the fake shit. Stop
yeah,
the
and I mean that's
posturing.
a big conversation starter, obviously.
Hmm.
Like those are meant to be starters.
Yeah.
But from there, it needs to go somewhere else. And that's, I think, honestly, what gets you return clients. Like,
Yep.
I get so many referrals from people that come back. Shout out to Kara Marie and her referral program, because she does have an amazing referral program that has really helped me out. But that said, I get a lot of people coming back, and a lot of times it's because their friends are like, oh my gosh, like I had so much fun with Anna. When I get on my Instagram stories and I'm chatting, people message me all the time, and they're like, you know what I love is just how honest you are. Because when I'm sitting there and I say something wrong, or I totally mess up or make a goof out of myself, I laugh at myself, and I'm like, you know what? I'm not going to just delete this and re-record it. I'll go ahead and send it, because that's what makes me real, and that's what makes me human.
It's
And
honest.
honestly,
It's
I feel
honest.
that that's
Yep,
what people,
exactly.
yeah, people appreciate it. And it's the same, like, especially online when I'm talking on Facebook, I always mess up with fat fingers is what I always like to say, but it's really just, I don't care enough to actually reread what I wrote. But I've had people who will complain and be like, you typed this wrong, or you said this wrong, or you're saying this wrong. But then I also get just as many people coming back and saying, I appreciate how real you are, because you really just didn't care. And it's not that like I don't know the difference. It's that I really just don't care enough, because I'd rather be authentic in the moment as opposed to worrying about all the technicality of things.
Exactly. If you could go back and give your younger self one piece of advice, whether it be about life or business or anything else, what would that piece of advice be?
Well, it would have been to invest in Apple when I had the opportunity. And then to pull out at the right time. That honestly would have probably been the best advice I could have gave myself. I used to work for Apple in their tech support, and I had the opportunity to have company shares. And I know Gary Vee always talks about his opportunity to invest in Uber years ago, and how he missed that opportunity. Well, I missed my opportunity to have shares invested in Apple, and man, I would have had a shit ton of money.
You're kicking yourself now, huh?
I would have had so much money. Luckily, we did get on the Bitcoin thing, and we pulled out of Bitcoin at the right time for my family, which was good. But there would have been so many things financial things that I probably would have said. Now, as far as a business, again, it would be that branding. But yeah, telling my younger self, and honestly, telling my younger self to just not care so much about what other people think of you, and to just worry about what you think about yourself, and work on building yourself as a person. That's probably like the prime advice that I would have given my younger self was, Anna, stop caring about everyone else and how they're looking at you. Just care about where you're going and what you're doing for yourself, because that's all that matters.
I think that's great advice for young women too, who want to get into the entrepreneurial world. And in general, just in terms of self-love and body love and body acceptance and all of that stuff. I mean, that all ties into our genre of photography, boudoir photography. So I think that's a great piece of advice globally.
So. Oh, yeah. And I mean, honestly, boudoir photographers say this all the time, but it really does, I believe, truly believe, for females and for males, that it really, confidence stems from how you feel about the way you look. If you could be like, hey, I am the best technical engineer or biological engineer or whatever job that you have, I am the best of it. But you're not going to feel the best or feel confident in that if you don't feel happy with who you are and how you look, and if you don't love yourself. And I truly believe that the way you love yourself is the way you teach others to love you. And if you're not treating yourself with respect and honesty and like just being genuine to yourself, then you're going to get a lot of ingenuity back to you. Is that even a word?
Yeah, sure. We'll call it a word. It's Anna's new word. Anna just created a word.
Ingenuity.
Yes.
A mouthful, but ingenuine. That's what I was looking for. You're going to get a lot of ingenuine people coming back to you when you're not genuine with yourself. And people say, oh, I'm around tons of fake people. I hate fake people. Why are people so fake with me? And then you look at them and you're like, well, stop being fake to yourself. because you are being fake. You're not accepting yourself.
Like attracts like, right? So they
Yes.
say.
Yes. And so that's something that I would have probably told myself my younger self as a younger self.
Mm-hmm.
And that is something that I tell my girls is, you really, my own children, is that they need to love who they are and they need to respect who they are. And that's the kind of respect that they're going to get back as long as they are holding that and holding it with high esteem. And for me, that stems from taking boudoir photos and saying, hey, you know what? I'm not going to settle with these cheap cell phone photos or selfies that I took of my butt in the mirror. Like, I'm going to set a standard of valuing myself by getting something done professionally. And it sets that standard that I want to invest in myself because I deserve to be invested in.
Excellent advice. And one last thing before we go. Do you have any big projects you're currently working on or coming down the pike that you would like to share with the audience today?
Oh my God, that's probably the worst question you can ask me because I always have tons of projects going on.
Okay, let's limit it to 3.
So yes, I do.
Okay.
I am working on a destination workshop with a group of photographers, and that's going to be being announced. I'm not going to announce who these photographers are yet, but that's in the works.
How about the destination? Can you tell us about the destination?
No.
No? Okay.
We have a couple things. We don't have the exact destination set. So it's kind of in the beginning works. We do have the team set, but we are deciding on where we want to do this.
Okay.
And destination could possibly even be San Diego. That won't really be destination for me, but it will be destination for most of these speakers.
Right.
And for most of the photographers traveling out here. The other thing is more studio stuff. I have a lot of events going to be planned this year in my studio. That's kind of fun. That's more for like the client aspects of things. With branding and marketing, we have a few different things lined up. Oh, and you guys, you know what? I am going to be starting a podcast here in the next month.
Yes.
It's called the Triple B, which is Business, Branding, and Boudoir.
Excellent.
I would say that's kind of a fun one to announce on here.
For sure.
Is that, anybody who's listening, they'll be able to tune in to me, and I'll be going over business, branding, and boudoir, the triple Bs, and just kind of digging deep into that and getting that out there. So that'll be launching here in the next month.
Awesome.
Possibly in the next couple weeks, but yeah, pretty soon.
Good.
How about you?
That's all you got, eh? Okay.
Yeah.
Well, that's quite a bit. So I would just like to say thank you very much, Anna, and thank you to the audience. Once again, my name is Brad Walsh, host of Empowerography. I'd like to take this moment to thank Anna Johnson, joining us from San Diego, California, sunny San Diego, owner of Boudoir Ego and Branding by AJ, branding and marketing. So thank you all for tuning in. I hope you enjoyed the show, and I look forward to my next episode. Thanks, Anna. I appreciate it. And you have a good day.
Yeah, you too. Thanks for having me. I really appreciate being on.
Thanks.
All right. Bye.
Thank you very much for listening to this podcast. If you haven't yet, please be sure to subscribe, rate, review, and share with all your friends. You can find me at visuphoria.ca and follow me on Instagram at Empowerography Podcast and on Facebook at Empowerography. Please join me next time for another inspirational story from yet another amazing woman.